I am Victoria, 35, and literally last weekend, my role as the family's keeper of peace? Yeah, it totally backfired. The country house I'd poured my heart into preserving, the one Grandma willed to me? It blew up into a full-on family betrayal at our so-called reunion dinner. My parents, with their usual air of authority, demanded I let them sell it to fund Cassandra's new life. When I pushed back, the room went dead silent. "You're tearing this family apart," Mom shouted, with everyone staring like I'd just set the table on fire. But here's the tea. Their betrayal didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note. This story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The air in my small apartment felt heavy as I sat on the edge of my couch, staring at the framed photo of Grandma's country house on my coffee table. It wasn't just a house. It was my sanctuary. My proof that I could stand on my own. The cedar shingles, the wraparound porch, the wildflower garden I'd spent years tending. It was where I'd found myself after years of feeling like the odd one out in my family. I'm Victoria, the middle child, the one who never quite fit the mold my parents cast for us. They wanted doctors, lawyers, or at least someone who'd marry into that kind of life. Instead, they got me. The artist, the dreamer, the one who'd rather spend a weekend fixing a leaky porch roof than chasing a corner office. Growing up, I was the glue, the one who smoothed over fights, remembered birthdays, and kept the family calendar from imploding. I thought that was my strength, holding us together. But last weekend, that illusion shattered. It started with a phone call from Mom, her voice tight, asking me to come to the family home for a special dinner. I should have known something was off. Mom doesn't do special without an agenda. Still, I agreed, packing my overnight bag with a knot in my stomach. I'd spent years dodging their subtle jabs about my unconventional life, but this felt different, heavier. The drive to the family home took me past rolling hills, the kind that make you feel small but grounded. I thought about Grandma, who'd left me the country house 5 years ago. "Victoria," she'd said, her voice firm despite her frail hands, "this is yours. Don't let them take it from you." I'd laughed it off then, thinking she was just being dramatic. Grandma always had a flair for warnings, like she could see the cracks in people before they showed. But now her words echoed like a prophecy. When I pulled into the driveway, the family home loomed. Red brick, perfectly manicured lawn, the kind of place that screamed stability, but felt like a stage set. Cassandra's car was already there, her shiny SUV parked carelessly across 2 spaces. My younger sister, pregnant and glowing, that was the golden child now, her life a checklist of everything our parents approved, married to a banker, expecting their first grandchild. I braced myself, tugging my scarf tighter, and stepped inside. The foyer smelled of Mom's lavender candles, and voices spilled from the dining room. I caught my reflection in the hall mirror, dark curls pulled back, jeans a little worn, eyes tired but sharp. I wasn't here to impress them, just to survive the night. "Victoria, you made it!" Dad's voice boomed, too cheerful, as I entered. He was at the head of the table, carving a roast like he was auditioning for a holiday commercial. Mom smiled tightly, her hands smoothing her napkin over and over. Cassandra sat beside her husband Greg, her hand resting on her belly, already playing the part of perfect mother-to-be. We exchanged small talk, the kind that feels like navigating a minefield. "How's the art business?" "Oh, still doing that?" I answered politely, my fingers twisting the stem of my wineglass. They didn't know about the late nights I'd spent turning Grandma's house into a retreat, a place where I hosted art workshops where strangers became friends under string lights. They didn't ask, so I didn't tell. But as the meal wore on, I felt it. The undercurrent of something unsaid. Mom's glances at Dad, Cassandra's 2 quiet sips of water, Greg's awkward coughs. I set my fork down, my pulse quickening. Whatever they were hiding, it was about to come out, and I wasn't sure I was ready. Dad cleared his throat, breaking the uneasy quiet, and passed the platter of roast toward me. "So, Victoria, how's that little art hobby of yours going? Still painting those, what do you call them, landscapes?" His tone was light, but his eyes flicked away, like he was checking off a box rather than actually caring. I forced a smile, my fingers gripping the serving fork a bit too tight, the metal cool against my skin. It's going well, Dad. Actually, I just had a show last month, sold out all the pieces inspired by Grandma's garden. The words hung there, but no one reacted. Mom nodded vaguely, her gaze drifting to Cassandra, who was rubbing her belly with a soft hum. Greg chimed in about some stock market win, and just like that, the conversation shifted, leaving my moment swallowed whole. It was like every family gathering I'd ever endured, a pattern etched so deep it felt like muscle memory. As I poked at my potatoes, the steam rising in lazy curls, my mind slipped back. Not to a vague history but to one sharp night that still stung, the kind of memory that surfaces unbidden when the present echoes the past too closely. It was my college graduation, 8 years ago, a milestone I'd clawed my way to on scholarships and night shifts at a coffee shop. I'd majored in fine arts, against everyone's advice, but I'd made it, top of my class, with a thesis project that got featured in a local gallery. I remember standing on that stage, cap tassel swinging, scanning the crowd for my family. They were there, in the third row, Mom fussing with her purse, Dad checking his watch, Cassandra texting on her phone. After the ceremony, we'd gone to dinner at this Italian place downtown, the one with checkered tablecloths and garlic bread that stuck to your fingers. I was buzzing, my diploma clutched in my lap like a talisman. "Guys, I can't believe it," I'd said, unfolding the certificate to show them the honors seal. The dean even mentioned my work in his speech, said it captured the essence of rural Americana. Mom had glanced at it, her lips pursing slightly before she handed it back. "That's nice, dear, but have you thought about what comes next? Art's lovely, but it's not exactly stable." Dad had grunted in agreement, spearing a meatball. "Your brother just got promoted at the firm, senior associate. Now that's something to celebrate." They hadn't even asked to see my portfolio, the one I'd lugged in my bag just in case. Cassandra, fresh out of high school then, had rolled her eyes playfully. "Vic, you're such a free spirit. I wish I could be like that, but I'm thinking business school. Something practical." The waiter came by and the talk turned to her upcoming applications, Mom gushing over potential scholarships, Dad offering to proofread her essays. I sat there, my pasta cooling untouched, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. My hands trembled as I refolded the diploma, sliding it back into its envelope. Why did I bother? I'd thought, staring at the candle flickering in the center of the table, its flame dancing mockingly. I'd sacrificed weekends, friendships, sleep, all for this degree that proved I could turn my passion into something real. But to them, it was just a hobby, a detour from the right path. The memory sharpened as I watched them now, in the present, the dining room lights casting long shadows on the wallpaper. Cassandra was talking about her baby shower plans, her voice animated, hands gesturing wildly. "We're thinking nautical theme, little anchors and sails. It's going to be adorable." Mom leaned in, eyes sparkling. "Oh, honey, that's perfect. We'll need to get the invitations out soon." Dad nodded approvingly, his fork pausing midair. "Smart choice, practical too. Ties in with Greg's boating hobby." No one circled back to my art show, the one where I'd stood in a crowded gallery, strangers praising the way I'd captured the light filtering through Grandma's oak trees. I'd sold every piece, enough to cover my rent for months, but here it was invisible. I shifted in my seat, the chair creaking softly, and took a sip of water to steady myself. My throat felt tight, like the words I wanted to say were lodged there. That graduation night, after dinner, I'd driven home alone, tears blurring the streetlights. Stopping at a red light, I'd gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, whispering to myself, "You're more than this." Grandma had called later, her voice crackly on the line. "Proud of you, kiddo. Don't let them dim your shine." She'd been the only one to send a card, tucked with a check and a note, for your next masterpiece. But even that comfort faded against the family's indifference, a pattern that repeated at every turn. My first solo exhibit ignored for Cassandra's engagement party, my workshop successes overshadowed by her wedding plans. Back at the table, Greg asked about dessert, and Mom bustled to the kitchen, her heels clicking on the tile. I watched her go, my fork tracing patterns in the gravy on my plate. The betrayal simmering in the air tonight felt like an extension of that night, a culmination. They celebrated the conventional, the expected, Cassandra's pregnancy now the crown jewel, my independence, my achievements, They were footnotes, easily overlooked. I clenched my jaw, a quiet resolve building in my chest. Grandma's warning echoed again, don't let them take advantage. As Mom returned with pie, slicing it with precise cuts, I wondered if tonight's secret would finally force me to heed it. The pie was apple, cinnamon wafting up, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. Cassandra took a big bite, moaning appreciatively. Mom, this is amazing. The baby loves it, kicking like crazy. Laughter rippled around the table, but I stayed silent, my mind still tangled in that graduation memory. I'd gone home that night and painted until dawn, channeling the hurt into bold strokes of color. A canvas of fractured family portraits that later sold for more than Dad's monthly salary. They never knew. Why would they? My successes were mine alone, built in the shadows of their neglect. But sitting here now, feeling the weight of their unspoken agenda, I realized something profound. That invisibility had forged my strength. It had taught me to rely on myself, to cherish Grandma's gift not just as a house but as a symbol of my worth. Whatever bomb they were about to drop, I wouldn't shatter. I'd stand. As the laughter faded, Dad cleared his throat again, a habit that always signaled he was about to steer the conversation somewhere deliberate. Victoria, we wanted to talk about something important tonight, he said, setting his fork down with a soft clink against the plate. His eyes met mine briefly before darting to Mom, who nodded, her fingers interlacing tightly in her lap. I felt a chill run down my spine, my hand pausing mid-reach for my water glass. The pie sat half-eaten on my plate, the crust flaking under my idle fork. Whatever this was, it wasn't about my art or my life, it was about theirs, and I was the missing piece they needed to slot in. But before he could continue, my mind pulled me back. Not to another distant memory, but to the raw, pivotal moment when Grandma's house became more than an inheritance. It became my secret world, my hidden triumph. It was right after her funeral, 3 years ago, the air thick with rain and the scent of lilies in the church. I'd stood by her casket, my fingers tracing the wood grain, whispering a promise I hadn't fully understood yet. The will reading came later that week, in a stuffy lawyer's office with leather chairs that stuck to my legs. The attorney, a balding man with wire-rimmed glasses, read aloud, "To my granddaughter Victoria, I leave my country house and its surrounding acres, with the hope that she finds in it the independence I always admired in her." My parents had shifted uncomfortably, Mom's hand clutching Dad's arm, Cassandra absent but texting her disappointment later. "Why you?" she'd messaged with a sad emoji. "We could have used that for family vacations." That night, alone in my apartment, I sat cross-legged on the floor, the deed spread out before me like a map to an unknown land. My heart pounded as I ran my thumb over Grandma's signature, the ink slightly smudged as if she'd pressed too hard. The aha hit me then, a surge of clarity amid the grief. This wasn't just a house, it was Grandma's vote of confidence, her way of saying, you don't need their approval. But doubt crept in immediately. The place was run down, peeling paint, overgrown weeds choking the driveway, a roof that leaked during storms. I remember standing up, pacing the room, my socks sliding on the hardwood. "What am I supposed to do with this?" I'd muttered, my voice echoing off the bare walls. "Sell it?" That felt like betrayal. "Let it rot?" No, that dishonored her. The struggle started the next morning. I drove out there at dawn, the sun just cresting the hills, painting the fields golden. Pulling up, I killed the engine and sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. The house looked smaller than I remembered, sagging under years of neglect. I got out slowly, the gravel crunching under my boots, and pushed open the creaky gate. Inside, dust motes danced in the light filtering through cracked windows, and the air smelled musty, like old books and forgotten dreams. I wandered room to room, my fingers trailing over faded wallpaper, memories flooding back, Grandma baking pies in the kitchen, her laughter filling the space. But reality hit hard. The plumbing groaned, floorboards creaked ominously, and the garden was a tangle of thorns. I sank onto the porch steps, burying my face in my hands, tears hot against my palms. I can't do this alone, I'd thought, the weight pressing on my chest like a stone. Money was tight, my art sales sporadic, bills piling up. Friends offered sympathy but no help. Family, they dismissed it as a money pit. Cassandra had called that week. "Vic, just sell it. Use the cash for something practical, like helping me with wedding costs." Her words stung, my jaw clenching as I ended the call abruptly, the phone warm in my hand. But that rejection fueled me. I stood up, brushing dirt from my jeans, and grabbed a notepad from the car. Lists, repairs needed, costs estimated, ideas scribbled in frantic loops. The intense work began in earnest. Weekends blurred into sweat-soaked marathons. I learned to wield a hammer, my arms aching as I nailed down loose boards, blisters forming on my palms. Paint splattered my clothes as I coated walls in soft blues and greens, colors that evoked calm. I hauled mulch for the garden, my back protesting with each shovel load, knees sinking into the earth as I planted wildflowers, daisies, lavender, sunflowers that nodded in the breeze. Nights, I'd collapse on the old sofa, muscles throbbing but a quiet satisfaction bloomed. "This is mine," I'd whisper, staring at the ceiling cracks I'd patched myself. Challenges mounted. A storm hit 1 month in, rain pouring through the roof like a sieve. I climbed the ladder in the downpour, tarp in hand, wind whipping my hair, fear knotting my gut as lightning flashed. "Don't fall," I muttered, nails between my teeth, hammering until my hands numbed. Contractors quoted prices I couldn't afford, so I bartered. Art pieces for labor, my canvases traded for plumbing fixes. Isolation crept in too. Friends drifted, calling my obsession weird. Family visits? Rare and judgmental. Mom once stopped by, wrinkling her nose at the chaos. "Victoria, this is foolish. Sell it and move on." I'd straightened, wiping sweat from my brow, paint under my nails. "No, Mom, this is me moving forward." But persistence paid off. Slowly the house transformed. The porch gleamed with fresh varnish, the garden burst into color, bees humming among the blooms. I started small workshops. Art retreats for locals, charging modest fees. Word spread. Strangers arrived, easels in tow, their laughter echoing where silence once reigned. My first full weekend group. 5 women sharing stories over coffee I'd brewed on the ancient stove. One, a widow like Grandma had been, hugged me at the end. This place healed something in me. Tears pricked my eyes as I waved them off, the sun setting behind the hills. The success snowballed, hidden from family scrutiny. Bookings filled my calendar, yoga sessions, writing groups, even a small wedding. Revenue covered costs, then built savings. I upgraded, solar panels glinting on the roof, a new kitchen where I experimented with Grandma's recipes. Pride swelled each time I unlocked the door, the key smooth in my hand. This was my massive win, a sanctuary not just for me but others. Grandma's legacy, secured through my sweat and resolve. Back at the dinner table now, Dad's words pulled me present. "It's about the country house," he said, his voice steady, but eyes avoiding mine. My fork slipped, clattering against the plate. The room seemed to tilt, my secret world suddenly under threat. I straightened, drawing a breath, the taste of cinnamon lingering bitterly. My breath caught, the clatter of the fork echoing in the sudden hush, as if the whole room had inhaled with me. Dad leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on the tablecloth, fingers steepled like he was delivering a boardroom pitch, rather than a family talk. Mom's eyes flicked to Cassandra, who shifted in her seat, her hand protectively cradling her bump, while Greg busied himself with folding his napkin into precise squares. The chandelier above us hummed faintly, casting jittery shadows on the walls, and I could feel the pulse in my throat, steady but quickening. "The country house," Dad repeated, his voice measured as if testing the waters. "We've been thinking about it a lot lately." I didn't respond right away, my mind racing to steady itself amid the rising tension. The pie's sweetness clung to my tongue, turning cloying, and I set my hands flat on the table to ground myself, feeling the cool linen under my palms. This moment felt like the eve of something irreversible, a judgment day I'd sensed coming but hadn't fully prepared for. Just that morning, as I'd packed for this dinner, I'd stood in my apartment kitchen, stirring coffee with a spoon that clinked rhythmically against the mug, staring out the window at the city skyline. The house, my retreat, was on the cusp of something huge, a life-changing shift that I'd kept close to my chest, like a secret weapon. A potential buyer had reached out 2 weeks ago, a kind-hearted couple from the city, artists themselves, who saw the place not as land to flip but as a haven to nurture. "We'd keep the workshops going," the wife had said over email, her words glowing on my screen as I read them in bed, the laptop warm on my lap. "Honor what you've built." The offer was generous, enough to fund my next chapter, maybe a studio downtown, or travel to paint new landscapes. But selling meant letting go, and I'd hesitated, my finger hovering over the reply button, heart twisting with indecision. Now, sitting here under my family's scrutiny, that deal felt like a lifeline shimmering just out of reach. Dad continued, his words careful like he was easing into a negotiation. You know, Victoria, with Cassandra expecting, we've got to think about the future. The family's growing and resources, well, they're not infinite. He paused, glancing at Mom for reinforcement, and she nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line before she spoke. It's been sitting there, dear. Grandma meant well, but it's a burden on you. We thought maybe it's time to repurpose it. Cassandra chimed in softly, her voice laced with that practiced vulnerability. Vic, the baby needs a stable start, medical bills, a bigger place, it's all adding up. Greg murmured agreement, his hand squeezing hers, but his eyes avoided mine, focusing instead on scraping a crumb off the table with his thumbnail. I felt heat rise in my chest, my fingers curling slightly under the table, nails digging into my palms. This wasn't a casual chat, it was a setup, a judgment on my life choices, wrapped in concern. As they spoke, my thoughts spiraled inward, deepening the realization of what the house truly meant now. It wasn't just bricks and blooms anymore, it was a thriving venture, my quiet empire. The workshops had evolved. Last month alone, I'd hosted 3 groups, revenue ticking up steadily. I'd even started an online booking system, my phone pinging with inquiries while I brushed my teeth or waited for the bus. The potential sale to that couple? It wasn't desperation. It was choice, my choice, on the verge of catapulting me forward. I'd spent the afternoon before driving here finalizing details in my mind, reviewing their offer letter, folded in my purse even now, the paper crisp against my fingers when I'd tucked it away. This could be freedom, I'd whispered to my reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting my scarf, the engine idling at a stoplight. But reluctance gnawed at me as I prepared for this dinner, the annual ritual I'd come to dread. Every year it was the same, the facade of unity, the subtle probes into my progress. This morning I'd delayed leaving, wandering my apartment, straightening books on the shelf, wiping counters that were already clean. My suitcase sat by the door, zipped but unpacked twice as I second-guessed outfits. Nothing too artsy, nothing that screamed independence too loudly. Just get through it, I'd told myself, splashing water on my face, droplets clinging to my lashes. The house's success buoyed me, but facing them always stirred old insecurities like stirring sediment in a glass. On the drive over, radio humming low, I'd rehearsed responses in my head, my grip tightening on the wheel with each mile. What if they asked about money? About plans? The deal hung there, unspoken, a shield I hadn't planned to reveal. Dad's voice pulled me back, growing firmer. We're proposing we handle the sale, put the proceeds toward Cassandra's needs, it's what family does. Mom reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine but not touching, her rings catching the light. You've done so much with it, but let's be practical. You're single, no kids, it's easier for you. The words landed like pinpricks, my jaw tightening as I met her gaze, seeing the plea mixed with assumption. Cassandra looked down, tracing circles on her water glass with her finger, condensation dripping onto the cloth. Greg cleared his throat awkwardly, shifting his weight, the chair legs scraping faintly. Internally, the realization crystallized. This was judgment, pure and simple. My company, the retreat I'd built from ruins, was thriving, teetering on this deal that could redefine everything. Yet here they were, poised to claim it as theirs, as if my efforts were a communal asset. My heart thudded, a mix of hurt and clarity washing over me. I'd prepared reluctantly, yes, but now in this charged pause I felt the shift. Grandma's warning resurfaced, sharp and urgent. Don't let them take advantage. My foot tapped softly under the table, energy coiling. The deal with the buyers? It was my power, my verge of change. As Dad opened his mouth to elaborate, I drew a deep breath, the air tasting of lingering dinner scents, readying myself for the storm about to break. The silence stretched, thick and expectant, my mind locking onto the house's image, the porch swing creaking gently, the garden alive with color. This morning's reluctance faded against the rising resolve. They saw a burden. I saw a legacy on the brink of evolution. My fingers uncurled, brushing the edge of my purse where the offer letter hid. Whatever came next, I wouldn't relinquish control. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating, as I stared at Dad, my fork forgotten on the plate, the gravy congealing in cold pools. His proposal, to handle the sale of my house, my sanctuary, landed with the weight of a verdict already decided. Mom's hand still hovered, her fingers twitching slightly as if debating whether to pat mine in faux comfort. Cassandra's eyes were wide, feigning innocence, while Greg busied himself with his phone under the table, the screen's glow reflecting off his glasses. I felt exposed, like they'd peeled back my skin to judge the bones beneath. "Handle it?" I echoed, my voice steadier than I felt, though my foot tapped an anxious rhythm under the chair. The chandelier's light seemed harsher now, spotlighting every crease in their faces. Dad nodded, leaning back with that authoritative ease he always adopted, his chair creaking as he crossed his arms. "Yes, Victoria, we've looked into it. Appraisals, market value. It's prime land, but you're not using it to its potential. Sitting on it like a hobby project." The word hobby sliced through me, my jaw tightening as I gripped the table edge, the wood smooth and unyielding. Hobby? The workshops, the guests, the life I'd breathed into those walls, they reduced it to a pastime, something frivolous. Mom jumped in, her voice soft but insistent, like she was coaxing a child. "Sweetie, we know you've put work into it, but let's be honest. Your art thing, it's not exactly providing security, and with the baby coming, we need to think bigger. Family first, right?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, her gaze flicking to my empty ring finger, a subtle dig I'd felt 100 times. I shifted in my seat, the fabric rustling against my legs, heat flushing my neck. This was the gauntlet, the barrage I'd braced for, but still stung with each hit. Cassandra leaned forward then, her belly pressing against the table, hand rubbing slow circles as if to emphasize her point. "Vic, come on. You've always been the independent one, the free spirit. You don't need a big old house tying you down. Greg and I are starting a family. We could use the space, or at least the money for a down payment on something closer to town." Her tone was pleading, but laced with that backhanded compliment, the kind that praised while undermining. Independent? Free spirit? Code for unreliable, for not fitting their script of marriage and kids. Greg murmured agreement. "Yeah, it's practical. You've got your apartment, your creative pursuits. This could help everyone." The questions came next, rapid fire, each one a probe disguised as concern. Dad fired first. "What are you even doing out there all alone? Painting? Hosting those little get-togethers? It's charming, but is it sustainable?" He chuckled lightly, as if it were a joke, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. I opened my mouth, but Mom cut in, her napkin twisted in her hands. "And honestly, dear, at your age, shouldn't you be settling down? The house is just sitting empty most of the time, isn't it? We're not saying you're failing, but maybe it's time to prioritize what's important." Failing. The word echoed unspoken, my fingers clenching into fists in my lap, nails biting into skin. They didn't know about the bookings, the revenue. The house wasn't empty, it was alive with purpose. But admitting that now felt like handing them ammunition. Cassandra piled on, her voice rising with emotion, tears welling artfully in her eyes. "Remember when I got engaged? You were so supportive, helping with the planning even though you were busy with your sketches. This is like that. Us supporting each other. But Vic, you're 35, no ties. I've got a baby on the way. Doesn't that count for more?" She reached for a tissue from the sideboard, dabbing delicately, while Greg patted her back, his watch clinking against the chair arm. The condescension dripped from every word. My life lesser because it didn't mirror theirs. My achievements invisible unless they served the family narrative. I glanced around the table, the familiar china patterns blurring slightly, my throat dry as I swallowed. This wasn't new, the digs about my choices, the compliments that twisted into criticisms. But tonight, with the house on the line, it felt amplified, a coordinated assault. I endured it, breath by breath, my mind flashing to small defenses I didn't voice. Like how I'd fixed the plumbing myself last summer, water soaking my shirt as I wrenched pipes in the basement, cursing under my breath until it flowed clear. Or the guest who left a note, "This place saved me." But saying it would invite more scrutiny, more questions like Dad's next one. "Have you even thought about taxes? Maintenance? You're not equipped for that, long term." As if I were a child playing house. Mom nodded vigorously, her earrings swaying. "We're just looking out for you, Victoria. Selling now while the market's good, it could fund something stable for you too. Maybe a real career shift. Real career. My art, my retreats, dismissed again. The barrage continued, their voices overlapping in a symphony of judgment. Cassandra, you're so talented, Vic, but talent doesn't pay bills like a steady job does. From a financial standpoint, it's a no-brainer. Dad, we've already talked to a realtor friend, discreetly of course. It's what Grandma would want, family unity. Unity? This felt like erasure. My chest tightened, breaths shallow as I traced the grain of the wood with my fingertip, grounding myself. The room smelled of cooling food and tension, the clock ticking relentlessly on the mantel. I let them talk, words washing over me like waves, each one eroding a bit more of the facade I'd maintained. Finally, a lull, their eyes on me, expectant. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my water glass, the cool liquid soothing my parched throat. This gauntlet had stripped away any illusion of equality. I was the outlier, the one whose life they deemed expendable for their vision. But in the sting, clarity emerged. The house wasn't theirs to claim. As Dad opened his mouth for another round, I set the glass down with a deliberate clink, ready to respond, the spark from earlier igniting into flame. The clink of my glass seemed to echo louder than intended, drawing their eyes back to me in a unified stare, like I'd interrupted a scripted performance. Dad paused, his mouth half open, brows furrowing as he adjusted his posture, the chair groaning under his shift. I could feel the heat in my cheeks, my resolve hardening like clay in a kiln, but I held my tongue for a beat longer, letting the silence stretch. This wasn't just a defense. It was the culmination of years swallowed down, now rising like bile. "You want to sell my house," I said finally, my voice low but steady, each word deliberate as I met Dad's gaze head-on. "The one Grandma left specifically to me, for Cassandra's needs, and you're calling it family unity?" My fingers drummed lightly on the table, a subtle release of the tension coiling in my arms. Mom's hand finally landed on the tablecloth, inches from mine, her nails painted a soft pink that now looked too innocent for the moment. "Victoria, don't twist this. We're not taking it from you. We're suggesting a practical solution. You've had it for years, and what have you really done? A few paintings, some weekends away? It's time to contribute." Contribute. The word hung there, accusatory, as if my life was a debt unpaid. Cassandra nodded, her eyes glistening again, hand still on her belly like a shield. "Exactly, Vic. It's not about you versus us. The baby changes everything. We need to pull together." Greg cleared his throat, finally looking up, his tie slightly askew from fidgeting. "From a logical standpoint, yes. The equity in that property could secure a future for the next generation." The conversation escalated then, voices layering over each other like a building storm. Dad leaned in, his voice rising with that paternal authority he wielded like a gavel. "Listen, we've already decided. We'll list it next week. I've got the paperwork started. You'll get a fair share, of course, but the bulk goes to Cassandra and the baby. It's what's best." Best. My heart pounded, blood rushing in my ears as I pushed back my chair slightly, the legs scraping the floor with a sharp protest. "Decided? Without me? That's not a suggestion, that's theft." The words slipped out sharper than planned, and Mom gasped, her hand flying to her chest, rings flashing under the light. "Theft? How dare you? We've supported you your whole life, paid for that art degree you wasted, covered your bills when you were finding yourself. This is repayment." Cassandra's tears spilled over now, real or not, as she dabbed with the tissue, her voice quivering. "Vic, why are you being so selfish? I thought you loved me. This baby, your niece or nephew, deserves a chance. You're acting like we're the enemy." Greg wrapped an arm around her, murmuring comforts, but his glance at me was cold, judgmental. The room felt smaller, the air thicker with unspoken accusations, the scent of the pie now nauseating. I stood slowly, my knees steady despite the tremor in my hands, napkin falling to the floor unnoticed. "Selfish? I've built something there, workshops, a community. It's not yours to sell." But they weren't listening. The escalation had tipped into finality. Dad rose too, his face reddening, pointing a finger that trembled slightly. "Enough. If you can't see reason, then you're out. We're done coddling you. No more invitations, no more help. Consider yourself disowned until you come around." Disowned. The word landed like a slap, raw and final, the formal announcement I'd half expected but still reeled from. Mom nodded, tears in her eyes now but her voice firm. "We love you, Victoria, but this attitude, it's toxic. We can't have it around the family, especially with the baby coming." Cassandra sobbed softly, burying her face in Greg's shoulder, while he patted her back, his other hand clenched on the table. The verdict was delivered, official and cutting, severing ties in one swift declaration. I stood there, the weight of it pressing on my chest, but instead of crumbling, a strange calm settled. My mind raced through the implications. No more forced dinners, no more judgments, but the hurt pulsed underneath, hot and immediate. Grandma's face flashed in my thoughts, her stern warning now a lifeline. "Don't let them," she'd said, and here they were, trying. My purse hung on the chair back. Inside, the buyer's offer letter crinkled softly as I grabbed it, a reminder of my control. "Disowned," I repeated, tasting the word, my voice even. "For standing up for what's mine, fine, but know this, you've exposed yourselves tonight. Years of of assuming I'd bend." The silence after was deafening, their faces a mix of shock and defiance. Dad sat back down heavily, his breath coming in short huffs, while Mom twisted her napkin into knots, avoiding my eyes. Cassandra peeked up, mascara smudged, whispering, "Vic, please." But I shook my head, stepping back, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The announcement echoed in my ears, a door slamming shut but also oddly opening another. "Disowned." It stung. Tears pricking my own eyes now, but I blinked them back, refusing to let them see. My hands balled into fists at my sides, nails digging in again, grounding me. This was the escalation's peak, the formal cutoff that laid bare their entitlement. As I turned toward the door, the hallway stretching dark and inviting, Dad's voice followed, softer but still edged. "You'll regret this, Victoria. Family is all you have." I paused at the threshold, hand on the frame, the wood cool and familiar. "No, Dad, I have more, and now so do you, without me." The words hung as I walked out, the front door clicking shut behind me, the night air crisp against my flushed skin. Outside, stars dotted the sky, indifferent witnesses. I leaned against my car, keys jingling in my shaking hand, the verdict's echo fading into resolve. Disowned, but free. But wait, no, the night wasn't over. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back to the immediate. I fished it out, the screen lighting my face, a message from the buyer, excited to discuss terms tomorrow? Tomorrow, the deal on the verge. I straightened, drawing a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs. The announcement inside had been their power play. But this was mine. As I slid into the driver's seat, engine humming to life, headlights cutting the darkness, I realized the disownment wasn't the end. It was the catalyst. The engine's hum vibrated through the steering wheel as I sat there in the driveway, the house's lights glowing warmly behind me like a mocking facade of home. My hands still shook slightly as I held the phone, the screen's blue light casting shadows on my face, illuminating the text from the buyer. "Excited to discuss terms tomorrow? Tomorrow." The words stared back at me, a beacon in the fog of betrayal that had just unfolded inside. I exhaled slowly, my breath fogging the window, and wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, the salt of unshed tears stinging my skin. The disownment echoed in my head. Dad's finger pointing, Mom's twisted napkin, Cassandra's sobs. All of it a crescendo of humiliation that left me raw, exposed, like I'd been stripped bare in front of them. Deepest low, right here in this car, the weight of years of invisibility crashing down. But the message pulsed with possibility, a reminder that my success wasn't a fantasy, it was real. Scaled beyond their narrow view. I thumbed the screen to reply, but before I could type, the phone rang, vibrating insistently in my palm. The caller ID flashed. Emily, the buyer's name, the artist couple I'd been emailing. My heart skipped, a jolt cutting through the numbness. Why now? I hesitated, finger hovering over the accept button, the ringtone piercing the quiet night. The driveway gravel crunched faintly under the tires as I shifted, debating. Answering felt like stepping into light after darkness, but the timing, precise, almost fateful, pushed me. I swiped to answer, pressing the phone to my ear, my voice coming out hoarse. "Hello, Emily?" "Victoria! Oh, thank goodness you picked up." Her voice was warm, enthusiastic, spilling out like she'd been holding it in. "I know it's late, but Mark and I just couldn't wait. We've been talking non-stop about your place, the photos you sent, the stories of the workshops. It's exactly what we've dreamed of for our retreat center." I leaned back against the headrest, the leather cool on my neck, closing my eyes as she continued. Micro details flooded in. Her slight accent, Midwestern maybe, the faint background of a dog barking, Mark murmuring agreement. We want to make an offer tonight, above asking actually. We've got the funds lined up and we promise to keep the spirit alive. No developments, just art and healing like you've built. Built. The word hit me, revealing the true scale in a rush. As she spoke, I traced the seam of my jeans with my free hand, the fabric rough under my fingernail, grounding me as the enormity unfolded. This wasn't just a sale. It was validation of the empire I'd created in secret. The workshops, dozens now with waitlists, had turned the house into a hub, revenue streams I'd meticulously tracked in a spreadsheet late at night, coffee mugs steaming beside my laptop, guests from across states, testimonials stacking up, transformative. A hidden gem. And the offer she quoted? It dwarfed what my family imagined, enough to launch my own gallery, travel, invest in causes Grandma would love. My breath quickened, chest tightening not with pain now, but awe. At this precise moment when humiliation peaked, disowned, alone in the dark, the call shattered the narrative they'd imposed. Victoria, you there? Emily's concern pulled me back, and I cleared my throat, sitting up straighter, the seatbelt digging into my shoulder. Yeah, sorry. It's been a night, but tell me more, why above asking? She laughed lightly, the sound genuine, unlike the forced chuckles inside earlier. Because it's worth it. Mark's an architect. He sees the potential in the bones you restored. And me, I'm a painter too. Your garden series inspired me. We visited last week, incognito, joined a workshop, saw the magic firsthand. Incognito. I gripped the phone tighter, knuckles paling, replaying that weekend. The group of 10, easels scattered on the lawn, laughter over shared lunches. They'd been there, witnessing the scale, the bookings that filled my calendar, the community I'd fostered. You were the couple with the sketchbooks, I realized aloud, my voice rising. The ones who stayed late, asking about the history. Guilty, Mark chimed in, his deeper tone joining via speakerphone. Couldn't resist. It's not just a house, it's a legacy. We want to honor that, keep the name, even expand the workshops with your input if you're open. Input, partnership, not erasure. As they detailed the offer, numbers that made my head spin, terms that protected the land, I felt layers peel away. The humiliation inside, it paled against this revelation. My success wasn't small, it was substantial, quantifiable, a force they'd underestimated. I glanced at the house in the rearview mirror, lights still on, shadows moving, probably them discussing my outburst. But here in the car, the call wove a new thread. External proof, timed perfectly to my lowest point. We talked for 20 minutes, my engine still idling, headlights off to avoid notice. Emily described their vision, solar upgrades I'd started, guest cabins in the woods, mirroring my unspoken dreams. Mark crunched numbers, his pen scratching faintly over the line. I interjected questions, my voice gaining strength, fingers tapping the dashboard rhythmically. What about the garden? It's Grandma's design. Untouched, she assured. Maybe add beehives for sustainability. Each exchange deepened the realization, this was the true scale. A thriving asset, coveted, life-changing. Tears welled again, but different. Relief, triumph. I wiped them with my sleeve, the fabric soft against my cheek. By the end, we'd agreed in principle, handshake over the phone. We'll email the contract first thing, Emily said, excitement bubbling. This changes everything for us. For me too, I thought, ending the call with a quiet, thank you. The phone dropped to my lap, screen dimming, leaving me in darkness punctuated by the dashboard glow. The deepest humiliation, disowned minutes ago, now reframed by this event. Success revealed. Not just survival, but prosperity, on my terms. I started the car fully, gravel spitting as I backed out, the house receding in the mirror. The call had flipped the script, igniting action. Tomorrow I'd sell, to them who cherished it. Family conflict? Inevitable. But this was my power unveiled. The headlights swept across the lawn as I eased the car forward, the house shrinking in the rear view. But something pulled me up short. A fierce, burning need to not let their words be the last. My foot hovered over the accelerator, then shifted to the brake, tires crunching to a halt midway down the driveway. The engine idled, a low rumble matching the thud in my chest. That call from Emily and Mark had crystallized everything. The house wasn't theirs to claim. That and my success wasn't up for their judgment. But running now felt like surrender, like letting their hypocrisy stand unchallenged. I killed the ignition, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant chirp of crickets. My hand gripped the door handle, cool metal under my palm, and I stepped out, gravel shifting under my shoes as I marched back toward the front door. Each step fueled the calm resolve building inside, a shield against the chaos I'd left minutes ago. The door was unlocked, swinging open with a faint creak, and I stepped into the foyer, the lavender scent hitting me again like a wall. Voices carried from the dining room, muffled, urgent. Dad's baritone mixed with Mom's higher pitch, Cassandra's sniffles punctuating. I paused in the hallway, hand brushing the wall for balance, drawing a deep breath that steadied my racing heart. This wasn't about rage. It was about truth, calm and cutting. I entered the room, the chandelier light haloing their heads as they turned, faces freezing in stunned unison. Dad's fork hovered midair, a bite of pie forgotten. Mom's hands clenched her napkin anew. Cassandra's eyes widened, mascara tracks still fresh. Greg half rose, chair scraping awkwardly. "Victoria?" Dad's voice cracked the silence, laced with confusion and a hint of wariness. "What are you doing back? We thought you'd left." I stood at the threshold, arms loose at my sides, feeling the weight of my phone in my pocket like a talisman. I did. But then I got a call, one that reminded me why I can't let this slide. Their scramble started subtly. Mom glancing at Dad for cues, her fingers twisting the napkin tighter, threads fraying under the pressure. Cassandra dabbing her eyes hastily, straightening her posture as if to reclaim composure. Greg sinking back into his seat, hands folding in his lap, avoiding eye contact. Dad set his fork down with a deliberate clink, leaning forward. "A call? From who? If this is some dramatic stunt." I cut him off, my voice even, stepping closer to the table, the floorboards creaking softly under my weight. "From buyers, real ones who see the value in what I've built, not as a cash grab for someone else's life." The words landed and the room shifted. Dad's brows furrowed deeper, his chair pushing back slightly as he processed. Mom's mouth opened in a small "oh," her hand rising to her throat. Cassandra leaned in, belly pressing the table edge, whispering, "Buyers? What do you mean?" Greg cleared his throat, fingers drumming faintly on his knee. I pulled out my phone, holding it up but not unlocking it, the screen dark, yet potent. "While you were in here deciding my inheritance was yours to handle, I was finalizing a deal. Above market value, to people who'll cherish it. Keep the workshops, the garden, everything Grandma intended." The scramble intensified, their reactions fracturing the united front. Dad stood abruptly, his napkin tumbling to the floor, face reddening as he pointed a finger. "You can't do that. We already started paperwork. It's a family asset." "Family asset." I met his gaze, unflinching, my hands steady as I slipped the phone back into my pocket. "No, Dad. It's mine. Willed to me. Restored by me. Successful because of me. You've spent years ignoring that, celebrating Cassandra's milestones while dismissing mine as hobbies, and now when it suits you, you want to strip it away?" Mom interjected, voice rising, her chair legs scraping as she half stood. "Victoria, that's not fair. We've always supported you." "Supported?" I echoed calmly, turning to her, feeling the cool air from the open door at my back. "By belittling my art? By favoring Cassandra's practical life over my independence? You disowned me 10 minutes ago for not bending, but look at you now, scrambling because I'm taking control." Cassandra's tears started fresh, her hand rubbing her belly faster, circles turning erratic. "Vic, please, we didn't mean, the baby needs this. You're being cruel." Cruel. The hypocrisy burned, and I exposed it layer by layer, my tone measured, like peeling an onion without flinching. "Cruel? You planned to sell my home behind my back for your entitlement. Years of it, my graduation ignored for your college apps, my exhibits overshadowed by your wedding. Grandma warned me, don't let them take advantage, and here you are, proving her right." Greg tried to mediate, his voice tentative, hands gesturing placatingly. "Let's calm down. Maybe we can discuss terms, split the proceeds fairly." Fairly. I shook my head, a quiet laugh escaping, not bitter but liberated, as I stepped back toward the door. "No. The deal's mine. Proceeds go to my future, maybe a studio. Causes that honor, Grandma. Not funding your assumptions that my life is lesser because it's not like yours." Dad paced a small circle, hands raking through his hair, strands sticking up wildly. "This is insane. You'll regret cutting us out. We're family." Mom nodded frantically, reaching out as if to grab my arm, but I was out of reach, her fingers closing on air. Cassandra sobbed openly now, Greg patting her back mechanically, his face pale. Their stunned scramble peaked, Dad grabbing his phone, muttering about calling the lawyer, Mom pleading, think about the fallout. Cassandra whispering, how could you? But I remained calm, the eye in their storm. Each exposure felt like shedding weight, their hypocrisy laid bare in their desperate flips, from disowning to begging. You've exposed yourselves, I said finally, voice soft but firm, hand on the doorframe. Entitled, taking for granted I'd always yield, but no more. This is my powerful exit, from your control, your judgments. I turned, the night air welcoming as I stepped out, door clicking shut on their chaos. Gravel crunched underfoot again, purposeful now, as I reached my car. The engine roared to life, headlights piercing the dark, and I drove away, mirror showing the house diminish, their hypocrisy rejected, my path clear. The road unwound before me like a dark ribbon, headlights cutting through the night as I gripped the steering wheel. Knuckles still pale from the confrontation. The family's house faded completely in the mirror, a pinpoint of light swallowed by shadows, but the echo of their voices lingered. Dad's accusations, Mom's pleas, Cassandra's tears, all blending into a cacophony that made my temples throb. I cracked the window, cool air rushing in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, a stark contrast to the stuffy dining room I'd escaped. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, ignored. It was probably them, scrambling further, but I wasn't ready for that fallout yet. Instead, I focused on the yellow lines flashing by, each one pulling me toward a different kind of gathering. One that felt like home without the blood ties. An hour later, I pulled into the driveway of my best friend Lena's place, a cozy bungalow on the edge of town, string lights twinkling along the porch like welcoming stars. Lena and our tight-knit group, my chosen family, had texted earlier in the week about a casual get-together. The kind we threw when life got heavy. Good food, better wine, no judgments. I'd almost skipped it, dreading the energy drain from the family dinner. But now, it was exactly what I needed. I killed the engine, the quiet settling as I sat for a moment, hands dropping to my lap, fingers tracing the seam of my jeans. The toxic residue from earlier clung like smoke, but stepping out, the gravel here felt friendlier under my shoes, each crunch a step away from betrayal. Lena opened the door before I knocked, her warm smile lighting up as she pulled me into a hug, her arms strong and scented with vanilla from baking. Vic, you made it, we were starting to worry. She held me at arm's length, eyes scanning my face, brows knitting at whatever she saw there. Rough night? Come on in, everyone's here. The living room spilled with soft laughter and the clink of glasses, a far cry from the tense silences at my parents' table. There was Alex, my old art school buddy, lounging on the couch with a sketchpad in hand. Mia, the yoga instructor who'd hosted retreats at the house, cross-legged on the floor with a bowl of popcorn, and Jordan, the writer who'd become a regular guest, pouring wine at the kitchen island. No blood relations. But these were my allies, forged through shared dreams and mutual support, not obligation. I sank onto the couch beside Alex, accepting a glass of red wine, the stem cool against my palm as I took a sip, the tartness grounding me. Family dinner went south, I admitted, voice low as the group quieted, turning attentive without prying. Lena sat on the armrest, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, fingers squeezing gently. Want to talk about it? No pressure, just space, unlike the family's interrogations. I nodded, setting the glass down on the coffee table with a soft thunk, and spilled it all. The secret plan to sell the house, the disownment, the call from the buyers that flipped everything. My words tumbled out, hands gesturing, clenching when I described Dad's pointing finger, opening wide at Emily's offer. They listened, really listened. Alex nodding thoughtfully, pencil pausing on his pad, Mia's eyes widening, hand covering her mouth, Jordan leaning in, elbows on knees, absorbing every detail. As I finished, the room held a beat of silence, not awkward but supportive, like a collective breath. Then Lena spoke, her voice firm, but kind. Vic, that's bullshit. They've always undervalued you? Remember when you launched those workshops? We celebrated here with pizza and bad dancing while they didn't even call. She stood, pacing a small circle, her socks sliding on the rug, energy radiating. But look at you, selling on your terms to people who get it. That's power. Alex chimed in, flipping his sketchpad to show a quick doodle he'd made while I talked. A stylized house with blooming gardens, me standing tall in front. This is you, Vic. Resilient, they've got their entitlement, we've got your back. He tore the page out, handing it to me, the paper warm from his grip. I traced the lines, a lump forming in my throat, not from pain but gratitude. The contrast sharpened everything. The family's dinner had been a battlefield of condescension, each word a weapon to diminish. Here it was a sanctuary of affirmation, gestures building me up. Mia reached over, her hand patting my knee, rings clinking softly. I've taught at your retreats, seen the magic, those buyers sound perfect, and us, we're your real family. No strings, just love. Jordan raised his glass, the wine swirling ruby in the lamplight. To chosen bonds, stronger than blood. We clinked glasses, the sound musical, laughter bubbling up as stories flowed. Lena shared her own family rift, how cutting ties freed her. Alex joked about sketching my revenge portrait series. No backhanded compliments, no demands, just genuine warmth, the kind that healed the cracks from earlier. As the night deepened, we moved to the porch, blankets draped over shoulders against the chill. Stars wheeled overhead, clearer here than at my parents' manicured suburb. I leaned on the railing, wood smooth under my elbows, sipping herbal tea Mia had brewed, chamomile steam rising in curls. Thanks for this, I murmured to Lena, who bumped my shoulder with hers. Always. You're not alone in flipping scripts. The group's chatter floated around us, a comforting hum. Plans for a group visit to the house before the sale, ideas for my next venture. It struck me then, deeply, the biological ties had been chains, weighted with expectations. These chosen ones were wings, lifting without asking for repayment. By midnight, hugs goodbye lingered, promises to text tomorrow solid as handshakes. Driving home, the road felt lighter, the earlier toxicity diluted by this genuine moment. My allies had contrasted everything. Where family demanded sacrifice, they offered celebration. Where betrayal cut, they mended with understanding. The house's sale loomed as a bridge now, not a loss, to a future built on respect, starting with self. The morning sun filtered through my apartment blinds in slanted stripes, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floor as I stirred my coffee, the spoon clinking rhythmically against the mug. Steam rose in lazy curls, carrying the rich aroma that usually grounded me, but today it mixed with the lingering fog of last night's events. My phone sat on the counter, screen down, vibrating intermittently like an insistent knock. I'd silenced it after the first few calls from Mom, but the notifications piled up. Texts from Dad, voicemails from Cassandra, even a hesitant message from Greg. The aftermath had begun, a desperate outreach that felt less like reconciliation and more like damage control. I set the spoon down with a soft clatter, wiping my hands on a dish towel, the fabric rough against my skin. This was the moment to build my fortress, to establish boundaries that protected the peace I'd glimpsed with my friends last night. I picked up the phone finally, thumb scrolling through the barrage. Mom's text started pleading, "Victoria, please call. We overreacted. Dad's were sterner. This isn't over. We need to talk terms." Cassandra's hit the emotional notes. "How could you do this to us, to the baby?" Greg's was pragmatic. "Let's find a compromise." Each one twisted something in my gut, a mix of old guilt and fresh resolve. I paced the kitchen, bare feet padding softly on the cool tiles, sunlight warming my arms as I passed the window. Handling this required precision, not lashing out but setting firm lines, rules that demanded respect or nothing at all. No more yielding. This was my engagement on my terms. The first call came as I sipped my coffee, the mug warm in my hands. It was Mom, her name flashing on the screen. I let it ring twice, drawing a deep breath that expanded my chest, then answered, voice calm but edged. "Mom." There was a pause on her end, a shaky inhale before she spoke, her words tumbling out. "Oh, Victoria, thank God, we've been worried sick. Last night was a mess, we didn't mean to push you away." I leaned against the counter, free hand gripping the edge, granite cold under my fingers. "Didn't mean to? You planned to sell my house without asking, then disowned me when I said no." She stuttered. "It was for the family. Cassandra needs help. You're strong. You don't." Strong. The backhanded label again. I straightened, setting the mug down firmly, the thud punctuating my response. "That's the problem, Mom. You assume my strength means I owe you. But here's the new rule. No more assumptions. If you want to talk, it's with respect. No demands, no guilting." She protested, voice rising. "But we're family. You can't just cut us off over this. I could hear her pacing too, faint footsteps over the line, perhaps in their kitchen, the one with the same lavender candles burning eternally. I'm not cutting you off, I said, my tone even, tracing the mug's rim with my fingertip. I'm setting boundaries. Calls like this? They stop unless you're ready to acknowledge what I've built. The house sells to my buyers, proceeds are mine. If you can't accept that, give me space. Silence stretched, her breathing audible, then a soft sob. Victoria, please, think about it. I ended the call gently, phone warm against my ear, a quiet click severing the connection. My heart raced, but not with fear, with empowerment. One boundary laid like the first stone in a wall. Dad texted next, a follow-up to his earlier message. Meet for coffee? Discuss rationally. Rationally, as if my stance was emotional hysteria. I replied deliberately, thumbs tapping the screen. Only if you listen without interrupting. No realtors, no plans, my decision stands. His response came quick. Fine, Park Cafe, noon. I agreed, slipping the phone into my pocket, then busied myself with breakfast, cracking eggs into a bowl, whisking vigorously, the motion releasing tension in my arms. This meeting would test the fortress. I needed to hold the line, micro gestures and all. At the cafe, the outdoor tables buzzed with chatter, the air scented with fresh brew and blooming jasmine from nearby planters. Dad arrived punctual, his stride purposeful, hands in pockets as he spotted me and nodded. He sat across, chair scraping the pavement, ordering black coffee without preamble. Victoria, he started, stirring his cup though it needed none, spoon clinking. Last night got heated, but selling to strangers? That's rash. We can get more as a family. I met his eyes, folding my hands on the table, nails tapping lightly. A subtle anchor. Rash? I've thought this through. The buyers value it, they'll preserve what Grandma wanted. He leaned forward, brows furrowing, finger pointing subtly at the table. And us? We're left out because… what? Pride? Pride. I shook my head, voice steady. Respect, Dad. Years of it lacking, my art dismissed, my efforts ignored. New rule, engage with me as an equal or not at all. No more deciding for me. He shifted, cup pausing mid-lift, steam curling ignored. Equal? We've given you everything, the old narrative. I leaned back, crossing my arms, feeling the sun on my neck. Given, or controlled? Acknowledge the betrayal or this conversation ends. Tension hung, his jaw clenching, then relaxing as he set the cup down. Fine, we… overstepped. It was minimal, but a crack. We talked haltingly, me outlining boundaries, no unannounced visits, no guilting via Cassandra, space until genuine apologies. He nodded reluctantly, hands flattening on the table. We'll try. I stood first, chair pushing back, a firm endpoint. Walking away, breeze ruffling my hair, I felt the wall solidify. Cassandra's voicemail came later as I sketched in my notebook at home, pencil scratching paper in fluid lines. A garden scene, therapeutic. Her voice cracked over speaker. Vic, I'm sorry, the hormones. Please, let's fix this. I called back, sitting on the couch, legs tucked under me, blanket soft against my skin. Cass, fixing means changing, no more entitlement. She cried, words muffled, hand probably over her mouth. But the baby doesn't entitle you to my life, I interrupted gently, fingers twisting the blanket fringe. Boundaries, support each other mutually, not one way. Apologize for the plan, respect my sale. She whispered agreement, sniffling. Okay, I do, sorry. Progress, fragile but real. Greg's text was last. Truce? I replied, on equal terms. The day waned, sun dipping as I handled each outreach, measured responses, enforced rules. Internally, peace, settled, the fortress not isolating but protecting. Demanding respect, rebuilt connections, tentative but honest. No more advantage taken. Healing started. The afternoon light slanted through the tall windows of the community center, dust motes dancing in the beams as I stood at the front of the room, my hands smoothing the edges of the podium, wood worn smooth from years of speeches. The sale of the house had closed 2 weeks ago, the proceeds deposited like a quiet windfall. And today marked the first step in channeling that success into something bigger, reclaiming my legacy, not as a footnote in my family's story, but as the headline in my own. I'd chosen this center deliberately, a nonprofit hub for local artists, the kind of place Grandma would have loved, with its mismatched chairs and walls plastered in vibrant murals. My fingers traced the podium's grain, a nervous habit, as the small crowd settled, about 20 people, a mix of old workshop attendees, friends like Lena, and a few curious locals drawn by the flyer I'd posted online. I cleared my throat, the microphone humming faintly, and began, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. Thank you all for coming. Today I'm launching the Grandma Evelyn Art Fund, a grant program for emerging artists funded by the sale of her cherished country house. The words felt weighty, real now that they were spoken aloud. I'd spent mornings poring over paperwork at my kitchen table, coffee mug leaving rings on legal forms, my pen scratching signatures that bound the money to this cause. The buyers, Emily and Mark, had sent photos of the house under their care, fresh flowers on the porch, new easels in the garden, and it eased the pang of letting go, knowing the legacy lived on. But this fund, it was my reclamation, turning the family's attempted theft into a force for good, honoring Grandma's spirit while redefining our name on my terms. As I spoke, I gestured to the projector screen behind me, clicking the remote with a soft beep to show slides, images of the house pre- and post-restoration, my art pieces inspired by its landscapes, testimonials from past guests. This isn't just about money, I continued, my free hand clenching slightly at my side, releasing as I exhaled. It's about creating opportunities I fought for, spaces where creativity isn't dismissed as a hobby. The audience nodded, a few murmuring agreement. Lena in the front row gave a thumbs up, her smile encouraging. Internally, the realization deepened. This was the positive impact I'd envisioned in those sleepless nights after the betrayal. The family's name, once synonymous with conventional success, Dad's business deals, Cassandra's picture-perfect life, now tied to empowerment, to artists like me who'd been overlooked. A young woman in the back raised her hand during Q&A, her notebook balanced on her knee, pen poised. How did you decide on this fund? Was it always the plan? I paused, leaning on the podium, feeling the cool metal of the mic stand under my palm. Honestly, it crystallized after a family conflict. They saw the house as an asset to liquidate for their needs. I saw it as a symbol of independence. Selling it myself allowed me to invest here, reclaiming what Grandma willed me, but expanding it beyond our bloodline. Murmurs rippled, heads tilting in interest. An older man, gray-bearded and paint-splattered, followed up. And the family name? You're attaching it to the fund. Bold move. I nodded, straightening, a quiet resolve settling in my shoulders. Yes, the Evelyn Fund honors her, but it's my version, open, supportive, not entitled. If my family wants association, they'll earn it through change. The questions flowed, each one pulling me deeper into the why. A teen asking about application processes, me describing the simple online form I'd designed late at night, laptop keys clicking under my fingers, a teacher inquiring about workshops, me outlining partnerships with schools, envisioning kids like young me discovering art without judgment. With every answer, the internal shift solidified. This wasn't revenge, it was transcendence. I'd reclaimed the legacy by infusing it with positive ripples. Grants for supplies, mentorship programs, exhibits for underrepresented voices. The family's entitlement had forced this evolution, but I owned it now, my actions rewriting the narrative. As the event wrapped, people mingled, clustering around the refreshment table, where I'd laid out cookies baked from Grandma's recipe. Oatmeal raisin, the scent wafting warmly. Lena hugged me, her arms tight, whispering, "Proud of you, this is huge." I squeezed back, feeling the fabric of her shirt against my cheek, a tangible anchor. A few attendees approached, sharing stories. One woman, mid-40s with calloused hands, confided how her family had mocked her sculpting dreams. Another, a shy college student, asked for advice on pursuing illustration despite parental pressure. I listened, nodding, my hand occasionally touching their arm in solidarity, the connections forging a new network. One built on mutual respect. Walking to my car later, keys jingling in my pocket, the sun dipping low and painting the sky in oranges, I felt the weight lift further. The fund's launch wasn't just an event. It was the realization that my success could heal, could inspire. Reclaiming the family name meant detaching it from toxicity. Evelyn now stood for resilience, for the artists I'd fund, their works carrying echoes of Grandma's warning turned into wisdom. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom, "Heard about your event, can we talk?" I pocketed it, unresolved but unburdened, the car's door clicking shut as I drove home. This impact was mine, positive and profound, a legacy reborn. But the day wasn't over. Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk, lamp glowing softly, and opened my laptop to review the first grant applications that had trickled in during the event. Fingers hovering over the keys, I read one from a single mom wanting to start pottery classes, her story mirroring mine in small ways, approving it with a click. A small smile tugged at my lips, the mouse cursor steady. This was the core. Using the proceeds to uplift, to create chains of opportunity that broke cycles of dismissal. The family's shadow loomed less, my light shone brighter. Evening deepened, city sounds filtering through the window. Horns honking, distant laughter, as I brewed tea, mug steaming in my hands. Sipping slowly, the herbal warmth spreading, I reflected on the reclamation. Not erasing the past, but building atop it. Grandma's house had been the seed, this fund, the forest. Positive impact flowed, emails from partners, plans for a gala exhibit. The family name? Mine to shape, on terms of empathy and growth. The tea cooled in my mug as I set it on the windowsill, the ceramic clicking softly against the wood, steam dissipating into the evening air that carried faint sounds of traffic below. I leaned against the frame, arms crossed loosely, gazing out at the city lights twinkling like distant fireflies, each one a small spark in the vast night. The day's events, the fund launch, the conversations, the quiet approvals, settled over me like a blanket, warm and enveloping, pulling me into a deeper reflection. This wasn't just about the house or the money anymore. It was about the internal shift, the realization that my worth had always been mine, not something to be validated by family approval or external successes. Grandma's warning echoed softly now, not as a caution but as a fulfilled promise. I'd protected myself, and in doing so, found peace. I wandered to the couch, sinking into the cushions, the fabric yielding under my weight as I pulled a throw blanket over my legs, its fringe tangling in my fingers. My mind drifted back through the months, the betrayal's sharp sting, the decisive sale, the boundaries set like stones in a riverbed, redirecting the flow. Each step had been a layer peeled away, revealing the core. My value wasn't in yielding to their expectations, but in honoring my own path. The art fund wasn't a trophy. It was proof that self-validation bloomed from within, independent of their gaze. I thought of Cassandra's tentative texts lately, laced with hints of change. Saw your fund announcement, proud? And Mom's calls, softer, asking about my day without agenda. Healing crept in slowly, not a grand reunion but small bridges built on newfound respect. Dad had even mentioned visiting an exhibit, his voice gruff but curious. The conflict had forced reevaluation, exposing their entitlement, but also opening doors to understanding, if they chose to walk through. Picking up my sketchbook from the side table, pencil rolling into my palm, I began doodling absent-mindedly. Swirls that morphed into the house's outline, then faded into abstract patterns of growth. The lead scratched faintly on the paper, a soothing rhythm matching my breaths. True peace came in this quiet moment, realizing I didn't need their full apology to feel whole. My worth was internal, forged in the fires of independence. Grandma had seen it in me, willed me the tools to claim it. The fallout, painful as it was, had been necessary. A catalyst for forging connections based on equality, not obligation. Cassandra and I had coffee last week, her hand on her growing belly, conversation halting but honest. I get it now, Vic. I took for granted. No demands, just acknowledgement. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, a slow mending that respected my boundaries. As the pencil slowed, I set the book aside, standing to stretch, my back popping softly in the stillness. The apartment felt fuller now, not with things but with purpose. Canvases leaning against walls, fund applications stacked on the desk, emails from artists buzzing on my laptop. This peace wasn't absence of conflict. It was acceptance that my validation came from within, from the choices I'd made to stand firm. The family rift had exposed cracks, but in repairing my own, I'd helped them see theirs. New connections emerged, Emily and Mark inviting me to guest teach at the house, Lena collaborating on fund events. Bonds built on mutual respect, echoing Grandma's legacy in ways deeper than property. I turned off the lamp, the room dimming to shadows lit by city glow through the window. Sliding into bed, sheets cool against my skin, I lay there, hands folded on my stomach, breathing deeply. The reflection crystallized. Worth wasn't earned through sacrifice or approval. It was inherent, shining brightest when I embraced it. The betrayal had hurt, but it led here. To peace, self-validated and unshakable. Sleep came easily, Dreams laced with wildflowers and open doors, a testament to the healing. Morning brought clarity, sunlight streaming in as I brewed coffee, the machine gurgling contentedly. I checked my phone. No urgent family please, just a message from Cassandra, thinking of you. I replied simply, me too. The reevaluation had shifted us all. Their entitlement confronted, my independence affirmed. We were forging ahead, connections tentative but rooted in understanding. Peace settled fully, internal and true. Have you ever felt that deep betrayal from the ones who should have your back, only to realize it was the push you needed to stand taller? That's what hit me, after discovering my parents' plan to sell Grandma's house, the one she left just for me, to bail out Cassandra. It shattered illusions, but man, did it build my resolve. I took control, sold it to folks who'd love it, and used the money to start an art fund that helps others chase their dreams. The family fallout? It stung, exposed years of them taking advantage, but it forced us to rethink everything. Slowly we're healing, with boundaries, respect, and real talk. No more entitlement, just honest connections. So, what do you think? Did I take control enough, or should I have pushed harder? Drop a comment below with your take, or share if you've had a similar family wake-up call. Your stories inspire me, and who knows, they might spark the next big change for someone else. If this resonated, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales of turning pain into power. Let's build that community, one story at a time.